Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Comics Cube. My name's Paul, and I'm here with Duy and Lamar. And today we are going to be talking about the Justice Society of America. This is the original super team from the 1940s. Before the Justice League, there was the Justice Society. Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman were members, as well as the original Flash, the original Green Lantern, the original Atom, and Hawkman, Owlman, Wildcat, Sandman, Starman, Dr. Fate, Black Canary, the Spectre, and more. And in the 1960s, they were brought back, and they were said to have always existed in another dimension on Earth 2, before ultimately they were merged with the main DC universe of the Justice League in the 80s, where they remain to this day. And today we're going to be talking all about them. So I'm gonna.
I actually didn't know that. Like,
What's
are they on a separate Earth now, or are they still on the same Earth as the Justice League?
They're back, baby. they're
So
back with the Justice League. There, yeah.
So how is Huntress Bruce's daughter?
It's set in the future. I've only read the first couple of issues because I'm trade waiting latest series. So it's set in the future. Yeah.
Okay. DC continuity. Confusing.
Yeah. It's
Par for the course. Go ahead, Paul.
Well, let's talk about this. Let's talk about that. According to DC continuity, such as it is, these characters have been around since long before Superman and Batman made their debut, because Superman and Batman, they got to be always in their 30s or 40s, right? But the JSA, they've been around for a lot longer in current continuity. And I know a lot of fans don't like this. They say it gives these characters a sort of unearned significance, and that Superman should always be the first superhero. What do you guys think about that? What do you guys think about the Justice Society being the first ever superheroes?
I love how, as you were saying it, Lamar just started rolling his eyes and shaking his head. So I'm gonna let Lamar talk on this.
It's funny, unearned significance for Green Lantern, unearned significance for the Flash. I mean, like, I could stop right there, and but
what about Johnny Thunder?
I forgot about him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's I mean, it's just a ridiculous statement that holds no weight whatsoever. I think that people have this, they have this idea about Superman being the first superhero. I mean, we all know that's technically the case, right? And that's cool, right? But just the idea that there were characters that in a certain timeline that came before them, even though they actually were created after, and stuff like that. For some reason that ticks people off. And it's funny because these people don't read the books anyway. So what difference does it make what you think? Like, that's how I feel about it. Why are you worried about it? You don't read the stuff. So what difference does it make? You don't care about any of these characters. It's all about you and your ideas and how self-important they are to you. But yeah, I'm not even gonna start the show going down that road. I'm a chill right here.
The presence of the Spectre ensures that Superman's not the first, so it really doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter, right?
Like, so the Spectre will always have been around before Superman. Also, I think what's interesting is, like, every other character in the world is on a sliding timescale. So for those listeners who don't know what that means, a sliding timescale means that everything happened X years. Everything from the start happened X years ago. So, like, right now, I think it's 12. Is it 12?
Something like that. 12,
something
14,
like that.
something like that. Yeah, so it's vague.
Superman debuted 12 years ago. Batman debuted 12 years ago. Everything has happened in the last 12 years, except for the Justice Society, because they are fixed to World War II. So even as the time scale continues to slide, the Justice Society will always have come from World War II, which is really interesting because that means sometime, they're like 20 years older than the Justice League. Oh no, now they're 30 years older than the Justice League. They're probably like 100 years older than the Justice League at this point. At least like 50,
Okay.
60 years older.
On that thought, just sorry to interrupt. I had this sobering thought earlier on, right? And I've got to share it with you guys since you brought it up. When the Justice Society were brought back in the 60s, right? In this very issue.
I can't believe you have that as a single.
Right? It's great, isn't it?
How much did you get that for?
If someone gave it to me. Yeah, it was a gift.
How much does that go for?
I don't know. I'm never going to sell it. I just love it.
Yeah, it's up there right now. Yeah, it's definitely in the 3 figures.
What Paul is not telling you people right now is that cover is actually so much better than the comic inside that cover.
Kind of true, yeah. But I digress, right? So in that story, the Justice Society come out of retirement and they've been away for ages and they're so old, right? So they retired in the 40s. They come back in the 60s. They're pretty much the age we are now. That was my sobering thought.
Yep.
In this story, the Justice Society are the same age as us.
Yeah, they're in their 40s. Yep.
Yeah.
I hate everything about everything you just said.
So just wanted to drop that on you.
To provide context for everyone in watching, we are recording this on my birthday, so thank you, Paul. I really haven't been thinking about time and the passage of time and aging at all today.
Anyway, sorry, I interrupted you. What were you saying? Sorry.
I don't know anymore. You've ruined my life.
Sorry about that.
No, but the other thing that Lamar was saying, right, is like some of these characters are already icons. We're talking about Green Lantern, the Flash. We could stop right there. But also Superman and Batman are already the greatest. They don't need to be first. I don't think it's a matter of unearned significance for these characters. I think that if you think that Superman and Batman's significance comes from being first, then you have missed the point of Superman and Batman.
Yeah.
Superman's significance is that he's the best superhero and that he sees everything in all of us, the best in all of us. And Batman's significance is that he is the embodiment of a stunted man-child.
Got to take him where you can get him, huh?
And he doesn't have to be the first stunted man-child.
He does not have to be the first stunted man-child. No. God, I'm gonna lose so many subscribers right now.
Yeah, that was the one. I think we were okay until you did that, and now it's just like, yeah, we got to start over.
World's finest, okay, world's finest. They don't have to be the world's first.
Yeah, no, that sums it up. I think I completely agree with you, and I don't know. It sort of gives Superman a bit more weight. That he's coming into a world that's already full of superheroes, and yet he still stands out. That just kind of speaks to how special Superman is within the DC universe. I
agree.
I've got no problem with it at all, and I just love these characters. So the interesting thing about them is that in this issue, I'm just going to show off that I own this again.
I love everything about this. He's so happy.
So in this issue, the Justice Society, they are on Earth 2, and the normal sort of Justice League, regular Justice League, our guys, I guess, they're on Earth 1, even though the Earth 2 guys came first. And that was the status quo up until the 80s. Justice Society were in this other dimension, and then everything got merged into one Earth. And even though now they've brought back the concept of the multiverse, the Justice Society, barring a few diversions, are still sharing the same Earth as the Justice League, and they've always been on this Earth. So what do you guys think about that? Do you think it was better when they had their own little planet that they could be the main heroes on? Or do you think it's great that they're on the same Earth as the Justice League?
I'm gonna go first. I'm gonna say that for the longest time, I thought the best of both worlds solution was to be, they would be on the same Earth as the Justice League, but there would also be an Earth 2. So essentially you'd have two JSAs running around.
Mm.
And then they tried that and it didn't really work.
Yeah.
And I can understand why that would be really confusing. So if I had to pick one of the two things, look, multiverses are fascinating to me if and only if you get to see different versions of the same character interact with one another. But at this point, even before the Crisis on Infinite Earths, Earth 2 Batman was dead. At this point, Earth 2 Superman is dead. You can absolutely have Alan Scott and Hal Jordan and whoever else, and John Stewart, Kyle Rayner, all come from the same Earth. Jay Garrick works better when he's on the same Earth as Wally West and Barry Allen.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. So the only actual casualties of putting them on the same Earth is Earth 2 Dick Grayson, who sucks, and Helena Wayne, and Power Girl's origin. And I think we can live with that. So I think they're actually better on the same Earth.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because Power Girl, basically she's like Supergirl, but she's from another dimension. I think that covers it. I don't think it's overly complicated. And when people try and delve into it, they make it more complicated than it needs to be, And I really like Power Girl. She's a great character.
I think she's great too. Did you know that the hole in her chest is because she can't come up with a symbol?
So she has to show her boobs. She's changed her name now. In the current Action Comics.
Really?
I don't know if you guys do that. She's called Paige now. So she wanted to yeah. So she wanted to distance herself from, being an alternate Supergirl. So she didn't want to call herself Kara or Karen Starr anymore. So someone suggested the name Paige to her because it's like PG. I don't know how necessary that was to myself, but whatever. It's fine. It doesn't really change anything, I guess.
What do you think, Lamar?
Yeah, what do you think, Lamar?
For me, if the JSA is not on the main Earth, whatever it's going to be, I don't think they're as effective. His could be, and I think it's because of what you were saying earlier, Dewey, about them being, everybody else has that sliding time scale except for them. They're locked into that period, right? Yeah. And
someone has to be around for that period, World War II.
Yeah. I mean, you got to have somebody there, and for it to be them and those characters and stuff, it really works, because there's, how we talk about, for example, we talk about Superman, and his whole thing is like, he comes out of that tradition where you had the carnivals and the circus and stuff, and the strongman tradition and stuff like that. For them, it's like on the JSA, you've got a few people that have that type of thing. You have Jay Garrick, for example. Alan Scott, for example. The whole thing with the lantern, you're talking about, he's tied to like the railroad thing with the guys hanging off the back of the rail with the lantern. You know what I mean? So that time period he's tied to, when it comes to that kind of thing, just as an example, it's the same deal. So even though Superman can kind of get away with the sliding timescale thing because just his whole ideal is just kind of evergreen, you know, with them it's a little different because they come out of that era the same way. Like when you start thinking about like what was going on in America, like the Industrial Revolution and, you know, and all of those kinds of things, it's the same kind of deal, right? Even though, you know, we still have trains and stuff that are around now, you know, trains are still used. You know, they kind of move people more so than things now, but they're still around. So having them predate, you know, like the big three heroes or, you know, like the big seven, if you expand it to the Justice League, it gives them something to aspire to, right? So like if they feel like, hey, we're kind of losing our way, what do? Go back and look to them dudes from World War II. You know, what were they doing? I mean, they had the whole world against them, you know, and they're in the midst of this stuff and they're doing all this craziness and stuff, man. And so it's like not only do they have to deal with the big intergalactic stuff and the aliens and the magicians, they have to deal with these normal human beings who have amassed a lot of power, and they just, it's just there's a lot going on with that. And if you take them away from that era, I'm not going to say they're less significant. I won't use that term, but it just gives you a lot to think about. You know, it's like it's certain stories that are better told with characters like that, you know?
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, it's interesting because that kind of brings me to my next question for us.
Wait, I forgot to say another
Oh,
casualty is Earth 2 Arthur Curry, and no one cares.
But he had yellow gloves.
I guess Earth 2 Oliver Queen too, actually.
Yeah.
They've kind of retconned that now. It's at some unspecified time, Ollie and Roy went back in time and became members of the Seven Soldiers, and then came back to the present.
The
So
Seven
them
Soldiers and the Justice Society?
they weren't in the Justice Society, but they were in the Seven Soldiers. So like this Jeff Johns who's done that. So it's kind
Okay.
of like Ollie got to be his own golden age version.
Of course.
I am thinking
course.
of the All-Star Squadron, the other
Yeah.
Of course, yeah.
the other 1940s a superhero team from DC
Yeah.
Comics, which is actually every character in the 1940s.
Yeah.
Because Roy Thomas wanted to write every character from the 1940s. So yes, that's where I was thinking of Earth 2 Oliver Queen.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes.
It's interesting because from All Star Squadron, we got like retcons which I thought were unnecessary because poor old Roy Thomas was writing All Star Squadron in the 80s, and he's writing this huge book set on Earth 2. It's been established for a few years. You know, he's a good few years into this series, and all of a sudden DC tell him, "Oh yeah, all this happened on the main Earth now." So all of a sudden he's retconning it. So like the Golden Age Superman adventures were now sort of filled by other members of the Justice Society, but they still happened. And I wonder how necessary that is. Like, you know,
he created a character. He pulled out a character, an obscure character from the Golden Age named Ultraman, I think.
Well, I thought a bit later on, then he created the Young All Stars, didn't he? And so Iron Monroe was a new character, and he did a lot of the Golden Age Superman stuff. And I think he had some guy, was it the Flying Fox who did Batman stuff or something like that? I don't know. But I just thought I'd remark on that because it's quite interesting. The comic writers need to plug those gaps. You know,
what I'm reminded of is that time that we had one of these calls with Paul Cooperberg, and he said I don't know if you guys remember this. He said comics were never meant to fix continuity. Then it becomes homework. Roy Thomas should have taken a break.
I think he should have. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, it becomes wiki entries then, doesn't it? You know, rather than stories. And
which is not to say you can't do a story out of it, but yes, maybe we should have taken a break.
Yeah.
Anyway, you had a next question, Paul.
Yes, yeah. Sorry. So yes, Lamar, you were talking there about how rooted they are in World War II, which is interesting because during the New 52, the much maligned New 52 in 2011 to 2016, I think it was, there was a series called Earth 2, where the characters, the Justice Society characters, were taken from World War II. They were no longer rooted to that, and they were made into sort of newer, younger versions of themselves with their own universe once again. And there were issues of that. It was James Robinson for a while and Tom Taylor, and I did quite enjoy it. And then it sort of became a sort of weekly series or something. And I kind of lost interest then. But after a few years, they just reverted back to the classic versions of themselves, back to these World War II heroes. So
Because Doomsday Clock finally came out.
Yeah. Doomsday Clock finally came out.
Doomsday Clock reintroduced the Justice Society into the main DC universe. Basically Superman willed them back to life. I'm just going to say that. And yes, it took a long time to come out and probably should have come out much sooner.
Yeah. So that's interesting because it only took a few years for these new versions of the Justice Society, the sort of younger, funkier versions, to revert back to the classic versions rooted in World War II. And like you say, it should have happened a lot sooner than it did. Does that mean that they're nothing without World War II, these characters? They're nothing without the 1940s setting?
Isn't Val Zod still around?
Yeah, so that still happened in its own little universe, I think. So yeah, so Val Zod, which is the new version of Superman from that universe, is still around. But they don't really talk about it much apart from him. But so do you think that these characters need World War II? And without it, they're nothing?
I don't think they're nothing. It's a huge part of it, though. It's like,
yeah.
So I've always said that, sometimes people like to play the game where if you could switch a Marvel and a DC character, who would you switch? And my answer from Marvel to DC would always be Captain America and put him on the JSA.
Yeah.
Right. So what that says to me is, like, if you take World War II away from the JSA, it would kind of be like taking World War II away from Captain America. He'd still be a great character, but something big would be missing. I think it's important that they're in World War II, because otherwise, like, let's face it, right? A golden age superhero, with very few exceptions, is a generic superhero. It's what you do with them later. So, like, we don't love Alan Scott, for example, because of the 1940s Alan Scott comics. We love Alan Scott because of the comics that came later. And the fact that it came later meant that they could pull from the material of the 1940s comics and, like, kind of treat it with more care and respect and consideration, like being a part of World War II. Right? So basically what that means is that so much of their personality and their drive and motivations, they come from the original source material, which is they were in World War II. So I think World War II has defined them so much that I think taking it away wouldn't destroy them as characters, but it does make them a little bit more generic. What do you guys think?
What do you think, Lamar?
One thing I do think that it does go a long way to kind of they're still great characters, right? And they're still important, but like Dewey said, it's a hole that would be there that wouldn't be there otherwise, right? And I think a lot of it is, if you go back and you think about what was going on during that time period, right? You have you're coming like, you think about like the late 19th century, we're in the Reconstruction era, and we're moving into the industrial age and things like that. And then you're coming off the back of like the Great Depression, and then you have like the Prohibition era, and then all of that stuff. So they're kind of coming up on the heels of that, and we're moving into the future, so to speak, right? Because so you
I
can't
love
really
when Lamar goes historical. Like, keep going.
So you can't really take them out of that, because if you look at the comics from like the late 30s and into the early 40s, because that's what we're talking about, the World War II era is from the late 1930s into like 1945. So the comics of that era in general reflected what was happening, right? So both the good and the bad, because there was a lot of bad stuff going on then too. You think about also, we're talking about you look at what was I going to say? Just where the comics were and the kind of material they were drawing from. They were drawing from these real life experiences. So that's why when people say that they liked when comics were never political, it's like, what are you talking about? Right? Like, when when has that ever happened? Like, that's literally never happened, right? So them being closely associated with the war ties them to that era, because then you got to figure, their characters and they're doing stuff that's centered around this war, but at the same time, the things that led to the war, right? So you think about these characters like as young people, right? And what motivates them and what drives them.
Yes.
That gives them something that the subsequent heroes wouldn't have. They had something different, so when they're coming off the heels of these characters, and it doesn't matter that, you're talking World War II was almost 100 years ago. Like, that doesn't really matter, right? You can have Superman in 2023 and still have them being like, man, like, I remember my dad, man, talking about these characters, and I know them, right? Like, I can, I get advice from them, from these heroes and stuff, just it gives them something that kind of puts them up into the stratosphere, because it's like, these are the people that Superman looks up to, these are the, so it gives them something that other characters don't have, and it makes them really, really cool, like, to explore like their own little world and their stories and how they affect everything else, like, it's crazy. And you have legacy characters too that come out of the JSA. So there's a dynamic there that if you don't attach them to that era, like, it wouldn't exist, and there wouldn't be a lot to it. It would be just like how they'll be like, oh yeah, well, this guy comes before this guy, and oh, okay, well, that's it, and that's the one thing that separates like Alan Scott and
Hal
Jay
Jordan.
Garrick from
Oh.
and yeah from like when you think about like the Blue Beetle, right? Obviously the most popular one is the one they're making a movie about, right? And then you have Ted Kord before him, and then there was a Blue Beetle before him. So there's a legacy there, but it's like people don't even think about it like that.
That's because Ted Kord is just Spider-Man without powers.
Yeah, that's true. That is very true. It's funny because Dan Garrett he wasn't even
no, he's nothing. There's no connection whatsoever.
Yeah, you see what I'm saying? So because of that, it's different, and that's kind of a good example of what I'm talking about. Is just like, you couldn't compare him, and I like that Blue Beetle legacy thing. I enjoy it.
Yeah,
but you can't compare that to Jay Garrick, to Barry Allen, to Wally West, and all that. You can't compare it to that.
I'll add to that, right? So two things. One is the fact that you fix them in the 1940s. So this may or may not even include World War II, but just the 1940s. The fact that you fix them in the 1940s means that they are forever associated with the values of the 1940s. So for example, New 52 Alan Scott was gay, right? And that was the first time they were like, oh yeah, Alan Scott is gay. Okay. But it's set in the modern day. It a lot different from 1940s Alan Scott being gay. It's a completely different story.
It's different.
This is a
yeah.
much more the 1940s Alan Scott being gay and having to hide it. 1940s Alan Scott being gay, infused with all of that history of from having been active in the 1940s and stuff, is a completely different, more captivating story than New 52 Alan Scott being gay, which is just like,
no
oh
question.
hey, I'm gay.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, so it's like, and it's funny because when they did that, there were characters like, man, you act like you telling me something I didn't know, and also to add to what you were saying, we have to remember that Alan Scott was modeled after Paul Newman, right? So, so that being the case, like, think about that. So in a lot of ways, you talking about Paul Newman being gay, like in the 40s, right? And going into the 50s and stuff. So that's kind of wild to think about,
Yeah.
Just from the time period to like right now, like you said, there's a total difference. And it's crazy to kind of think about, like, and it's like, as soon as you said that, like, I knew what you were going to say, but just the way you said it, like, you hit the nail on the head with that. Yeah.
The other example I have is Hourmans, right?
Yeah.
Rick Tyler, the second Hourman, is the son of Rex Tyler, the first Hourman. And his problem is that Rex Tyler, his dad, is an emotionally closed off guy.
Yeah.
Right. Fixing him in the 1940s will always make sense because of that.
Yeah.
Right. It will always make sense
absolutely.
because he's fixed in the 1940s. With a sliding time scale, you might eventually get to a point where it's like, what? But dads of that generation aren't emotionally closed off. Right. So I think it makes a lot of sense to fix them in World War II.
Yeah.
Paul, what do you think?
Well, I think it's not just about, I completely agree with both of you, by the way, but it's not just about World War II for me. It's about them being old. I think them being old is part of their character too, is an important part of the character, because with with your Justice Leagues, with your Wally West, your Barry Allens, Hal Jordan, Kyle Rayner, apart from like Elseworlds and What If stories, they're not going to grow old.
Yes.
They're always going to be in their 30s and the 40s. I know Dan Didio wanted them to grow old and pass on to the next generation, but his plans got scuppered and he left, and it's not happening, and I don't think realistically it can ever happen. I don't think fans would be up for it. So you're never going to get that poignancy that comes with, getting old, your abilities sort of slipping away from you a little bit, you're not as fast as you were in your prime, you're not as strong as you were in your prime, your friends are starting to die, you can't tell those stories with superheroes normally, but with the Justice Society you can, and it just opens up a whole new dimension and a whole new poignancy to superhero stories. With the Justice Society, you can put an ending to the superhero story.
Yeah.
And what I love about what they've done with the Justice Society is that they have let a lot of them die. They kept the really popular ones alive through, magic or whatever. So Jay Garrick's still kicking about.
The Speed Force.
Yeah. Alan Scott's still kicking about. Wildcat's still kicking about, even though that makes no sense.
What are you talking about?
Because he's just a
Wildcat
dude
having 9 lives.
I'm not complaining. I love
how when they explained that he had 9 lives, it was just the most casual, most cavalier thing. Oh yeah, I have 9 lives.
I have 9 lives. Let's not talk about it anymore. So the popular ones are still alive, but others, they have passed away now. The original Starman is dead. Dr. Midnight's dead. The original Owlman was brought back to life for some reason, but nobody seems to remember that. so he's kind of dead. The original Atom's dead. And so you do have that feeling of like, these people will die eventually. If they don't die in battle, they'll die of old age. And there's a sadness to that, and it enhances the DC universe to have a reminder of that there. And then, like you were saying there, Lamar, you get the legacy characters then, which also enhances the DC universe. And in a lot of ways, that's what DC has got going for it more than Marvel, is that they do these legacy characters so well. Even though Marvel have more of them now, I don't think they're done in the same way.
They're not. No, it's not the same.
Yeah,
No,
it's
not the
different.
same.
Yeah.
So I guess like the Justice Society, it gives you the twilight of the superheroes, to use a phrase, an infamous phrase. It
But
gives
that,
you
by
that
the
ending.
way, may or may not be a preview for our next episode, dear viewers.
And I think it enhances the DC universe and gives them that something that Marvel don't have. You know, even though they've got their 1940s characters, it's not the same.
Yeah.
You know who's still around? Johnny Thunder.
Oh yeah, he's still around, isn't he? Yeah. Yeah,
I like Jakeem more than Johnny, but you know,
Jakeem's better. Yeah,
Jakeem's a better character. But anyway, yes, absolutely.
So I think we're agreed. Yeah, World War II and legacy and being the older generation, that's a big part of them, and that's not a bad thing.
Well, if you're going to fix them so that they're old, of all of the events that make sense, World War II is it.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do? Like fix them in like, I don't know, during the Cold War? Like what were that's not exciting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, obviously, like morally grey stuff happened on the side of the Allies, and bad stuff happened. The Allies did bad stuff in World War II, but generally speaking, you don't get more of a bad guy than the Nazis, do you?
No.
I mean, they're evil, you know. So you've got more of a clear-cut sort of goodies baddies scenario. I mean, I know it's not as simple as that. Please don't comment and have a go at me. Please don't cancel me. I know it's more complicated than goodies and baddies, but broadly speaking, in terms of storytelling and the American myth, you've got goodies and baddies there, and it makes so much sense to anchor these characters in an era like that than, say, in the Vietnam War or even the Gulf War. Yeah. And it's interesting that even when they revamped them in this Earth 2 book in the New 52, they still attached them to a war because they were attached to Darkseid's invasion of that Earth. And because in that Earth, he killed Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, Darkseid did, and he invaded most of the planet. And so they were kind of tied to that war. But obviously, it doesn't. I mean, I did like those comics, but it doesn't have the same resonance.
Yeah, it could still be a good comic. It just won't be the same comic.
No, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And you're taking a fundamental thing of these characters that enhances the DC universe. Yeah. So, with that in mind, I'm now going to ask, who is your favorite OG original 1940s Justice Society member? Lamar.
Oh, God, what a great question.
You got to pick one.
Hey, I don't know if I can, man. For those of y'all who don't know, I'm the resident JSA aficionado here. So
I'm gonna say Superman. I'm kidding.
Yeah. So it's hard for me to pick, man. But I'm gonna pick Wildcat just so we could talk about Wildcat for a minute.
Oh yeah, that's a good pick. That's a good pick.
Yeah, because Wildcat is just fly. For those of you who don't know, Wildcat is a character. He was the heavyweight champion of the world. He killed a man in the ring, and then some other things popped off, and then he just was like, I want to use my fighting talents for the betterment of human beings, right? And so a lot of things happen subsequently. He joins the JSA. Then when Batman comes along, it's established that when Batman was learning every martial art known to man and some alien martial arts, I don't know how that works, but he did it. And once that happens, when he decides he wants to learn how to box, he learns to box from Wildcat, and there was even a comic called Batman versus Wildcat. I don't know why this comic ran for, it was like 3 or 4 issues or something. I don't know why, but it was okay. And and they're fighting and they're blindfolded, and Batman, when he gets hit with the left hook, he's like, oh, that's Ted Grant, that's Wildcat, I'd know that one anywhere. So he's pretty much like he's like the gung-ho character, like when the chips are down, like he's the guy that doesn't really have powers outside of the 9 lives, but he's always the one that's like, yeah, we can do it.
The 9 lives is not a power.
Yeah. If you want to.
It's a convenient plot excuse.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so he's like the one, when it comes to that. He's the down and dirty dude, but even just that, because he's tied to that era, like the era, like you're talking about, like the late 30s, early 40s. That was a great era in boxing, man. Anybody who's into boxing, or what I'm talking about. So yeah, just having somebody who reps that is just, he's like a blue collar kind of dude, and that resonates with me, because I come from a family of like blue collar people. So but yeah, Wildcat is awesome.
I usually love like gender bent legacy characters, like Jane Foster's Thor, etc. One exception that I didn't love was Yolanda Montes as the second Wildcat.
Yeah.
Because I do think that, there's only one Wildcat.
Right.
Like, that's one where I'm like, don't even try. There's only one Wildcat. Like, because for you to be a superhero based on the fact that you're just a really good boxer, that works once. It doesn't work twice.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to make that work out. I mean, the dude's costume, he has a cat mask, a skin tight black out costume, and his hands are taped up. Like, it's like
so cool.
Yeah.
But it sounds really dorky, but he does look really cool. Like,
awesome.
Even in the 40s, like, I've got his first appearance in some collection somewhere, and he looks amazing even in the 40s. Like,
yeah. Usually you wouldn't think. Usually a cat theme is for female characters, right? But like, just the way that Wildcat is designed, the way that they draw him, the way he carries himself. There's this one iconic cover from the 2000s JSA run, where it's just a close up of him going like this. Yeah. And then he's bleeding, and then his hands are taped up, and it's so awesome. Wildcat's so awesome.
And that issue is, if anyone wants to check it out, is absolutely incredible, because Wildcat's in the bath on his own in the JSA headquarters, and the Injustice Society invade the HQ, and he's the only one there. So he has to fight them all in the bollocky buff, and he's naked, I should say that. And it's incredible, he fights the whole Injustice Society on his own. It's absolutely brilliant.
He's Batman, but he's joyful.
Yeah, he's fantastic. he trained Batman, and he taught all the superheroes how to fight. He taught Batman how to fight, Catwoman how to fight, all of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, he's good. How about you, Duy? Who's your favorite?
You were gonna say something. I interrupted you.
Oh yeah, you mentioned Yolanda. What do you think of Wildcat's son?
Oh, I don't remember him.
He's literally a werecat.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Because I think it's quite interesting, because you didn't see much of him, because it happened in Jeff Johns' second Justice Society series, which I wasn't as keen on, if I'm honest.
No, me too.
And and he's not a fighter, but he can turn into a werecat, and his father's like the best fighter, and
isn't he based
human as well?
Isn't he based on a character originally created for Kingdom Come?
Yes, I believe he is
Mhm.
actually. Yeah,
Yeah.
now that you mention it. Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But,
I agree with you. The 2000s JSA run by Jeff Johns was amazing. But it did for me take like a big dive after Infinite Crisis.
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
My response to that is there's only one Wildcat.
Yeah, you're right. I agree. There is only one Wildcat. Yeah. So, who's your favorite JSAer then, Duy?
I hate you for this question. I think it's a bit of a I think it's a little bit of a cheat for me to say either Ted Knight Starman or Jay Garrick the Flash, because if I'm being honest, them being my favorite JSA doesn't have to do with the JSA. So they're my favorite members of the JSA, but it's because I really love Jay Garrick in the context of the Flash family, and I really love Ted Knight because if anybody doesn't know, I'm a huge Starman fan. Those are the two, or so are all three of us. This Starman series from the 90s kickstarted the JSA resurgence.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So those two are really cool, but not in the context of the JSA. You know who I actually really love? Um, and I really want them to explore more because I think he's got a cool but idiosyncratic set of powers, which means that he can get superpowers, but only ever for 1 hour at a time.
Yeah, I love this guy.
Is Rex Tyler our man? Because, and I think every writer who's ever written him has latched on to how weird that is, because
Yeah.
it's drugs. He's on drugs, and everyone who's ever done it has been like, you know what? We're just gonna run with this. He's got a problem.
Yeah.
Like, there's this one amazing issue of Solo by Mike Allred. You know the one I'm talking about? It's the same one where he treats Adam West Batman like all dark. So there's one
Mhm.
story in it where it's Our Man and he's like, "Oh no, somebody needs my help." So he takes a Miraclo pill and now he's got like superpowers for an hour, and then he saves the person. He's like, "Well, I still have 58 minutes.
I remember.
I guess I'm working out. Oh no, I'm done. Now I guess I'm gonna run. Oh no, I'm done." Like, this is amazing. This is amazing, and I love this guy. And uh my ultimate one of my ultimate triggers are fathers and sons. I guess that's why like the Starman series gets to me so much. I do love the relationship between Rex and Rick Tyler.
Yeah, it's dope. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Paul, can I
It's,
guess who you're gonna say? Oh wait, go ahead.
well, no, I just want to talk about our man some more because he's so great. I mean, as much as I love Rex Tyler, I don't know why they brought him back to life. I thought like him, I guess he had unresolved issues with his son, and that was lovely, like you say, because like for a while, Rex was in a bubble of time, an hour of time,
Yeah.
before he died, and Rick
Mhm.
could go back and talk to him, but it would use up minutes of that hour. So, and I thought that was wonderful. That was such a lovely conceit.
Mhm.
But then they rescued him from that bubble of time, and he came back, and I don't really know what purpose he was serving after that, because Rick is a great character.
Well, that was a great story. Like, I love
Yeah,
those two issues where they save him and the
yeah,
third hour man takes his place in that bubble
yeah,
of time. I love those two issues when they save him. It does feel like it was just the end of that arc and they had no idea what to do with Rex after.
Yeah.
yeah,
But it
yeah.
was nice.
It was nice. I will say it. It was nice. Yeah.
Mhm.
And that story, like you say, is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, it's a very
And
big highlight of the Jeff Johns run.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
And one of my favorite things about Our Man is because I've been reading Starman again recently.
Yeah.
And there's an issue where it kind of flashes back where like Our Man, Green Lantern, Alan Scott, Starman, and someone else
I
take
know
on
the
Ragdoll.
issue you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. And so most of them go and fight Ragdoll. I think Flash, Green Lantern, and Starman go and fight Ragdoll, and they leave Hourman on a bridge to fight 100 people. So he takes a pill and he's got an hour to fight
That's
100 or hundreds of people on this bridge. And it's really cool because it's like, yeah, he's got, because I think it describes like, oh, Rex was like a god that night. He fought them all. He was amazing, which is beautiful. But then you kind of stop and you think, why did they pick him to fight hundreds of people on a bridge? Like, they had Green Lantern, Flash, Starman, and Hourman, and they picked the 3 most powerful ones to go after Ragdoll, and they leave poor old Hourman on this bloody bridge, fighting hundreds of people.
He held the bridge. He held the bridge.
So,
My no prize explanation for that is because Hourman really liked fighting 100 people.
Yeah,
because he is an addict.
Yes, yeah, he is.
He's addicted to Miraclo and he's addicted to the adrenaline.
Yeah, he's a fantastic character, and like even when he gets over the Miraclo, he's like addicted to other stuff, and like that carries over to his son, that they've got this addictive personality, and they've always got to be on guard for it because they can. And I can kind of empathize a bit. Like I don't have any problems with addiction particularly, but I get fixated on stuff, and I really identify with that notion of like being careful, or you get carried away with stuff. You know?
I get you. I feel like we're all like that.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, that's easily understood. And Hourman's costume design is just really, really dope.
Yeah,
you know, like
incredible.
yeah. It's like it's a one-off, right? Like, there's it's so tied to his visual presentation and what he's about as a character is like this, so and even amongst the other characters of the time, like his design was like really forward thinking, like you could put it out right now and it would still work,
Yeah,
I agree.
mean, he looks cool.
Yeah,
amongst a crowd of superheroes, like stands out.
I think also he's an example of guys, writers. If you really, really look at these old characters, you will find something to expand on, because I guarantee you absolutely nobody working on comics in the 1940s thought the words "Hourman is an addict, Hourman's on drugs." But then you read it in the 80s and you're like, you know what? Hourman's an addict, Hourman's on drugs. And we're going to run with that. And I think like, how many more characters where you're could be treated in a way where you're like, you know what? I'm just going to read a few Golden Age stories and then I'm sure I'm going to see something to expand on. There's so much story potential in there. And I think Hourman is like such a great example, a great and easy example of
absolutely.
Story potential.
Yeah.
Paul, can I guess who you're going to say?
Go on. Who am I going to say?
Is it Wesley Dodds?
Yes, it is. Yes. I love Wesley Dodds. Yeah. He's so cool. Sandman, the original Sandman.
Yes.
Yeah, he's just a dude in a gas mask. And he's got gas guns and he has prophetic dreams about crimes that are going to happen. And then he goes out in his gas mask and his fedora and his trench coat and with his gas guns, and he solves that crime just so he can have some sleep until the next dreams hit him. Yeah,
it's excellent. Like he's like, as Lamar was saying about Hourman's visual design, the Sandman's visual design, that's like yep, I was born in the 1940s.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I'm going to kick your ass.
Yeah. And they gave him, like Kirby actually gave him an updated costume in the 40s. And obviously those stories are really beautiful because they're Kirby, but it's a rubbish costume. It's just this green purple acrobat thing. But yeah, the gas mask is and he's got, because he's like this, he's not a typical, now just to give a bit of background, he was quite typical in the 40s. He was like this playboy guy in the top hat, and everyone thought he was a bit of a fop, but then he'd solve these crimes, in his secret identity as Sandman. And then he was kind of updated in the 80s and 90s. as a sort of pulpy noirish character, and that's when they sort of tied him to Neil Gaiman's Sandman a bit more, in that the absence of Neil Gaiman's Sandman is what was giving him these prophetic dreams, and they made him less sort of a conventional superhero in that he's quite tubby, isn't he? He's a bit chubby, which I can identify with, you know, and he's very intelligent and well-traveled, which is less easy for me to identify with.
Yikes.
But something that the modern day Sandman, the 80s and 90s version of the character, which was still set in the 30s, that version of the character, something that he shares with the original Golden Age Sandman, is Diane Belmont, his girlfriend, who knows his secret identity and helps him, and is very much an equal partner in their mission. And she was in the 40s as well, in those original 1940s story. She was a lot, like even more so than Lois Lane. She was ahead of her time, because Lois never knew that Clark was Superman. As progressive a character as Lois was, she never knew that Clark was Superman. But Diane did know that Wesley was Sandman, and she was his partner. And both versions of Sandman sort of share the character of Diane, and she's such an amazing character. And she brings this character up, as well as the look and the uniqueness of the character. She elevates the character to something special. So yeah, Wesley and Diane. And
side note, you go ahead.
No, God, sorry.
Side note, digression. Did you ever hear the story that in 1940, Siegel wanted to have Clark reveal to Lois that he was Superman?
Really? Oh, wow.
Yep.
Like, I don't remember the details, but like he was overruled.
That would have worked. You know, it's.
I don't remember the details. Lamar, if you know the details, but I don't remember any of the details of that. But anyway,
I'm gonna have to look that up again. Yeah, but I know what you're talking about. It would have saved us a whole lot of foolishness that came about like in the 50s with the stuff they were doing with Lois, if that would have happened. You know what I mean? And it would have stuck.
Well, Superman wouldn't have had to have built quite so many robots that looked like him in the 50s and 60s. But yeah, it was also because Kirby gave him a sidekick as well. I think it was Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. When they gave him that horrible costume, they gave him a sidekick, Sandy the Golden Boy. And there was this story from, I think it was actually from the 80s, wasn't it? Like whatever happened to this? No, it was from the 70s, and they established that Wesley accidentally turned Sandy the Golden Boy into a giant sand monster and kept him for decades in a big bell jar, which obviously is ridiculous, but I quite like that as well.
Jeff Johns did end up using Sandy to great effect in his 2000s run.
Yeah,
and
got him out of the bell jar. Yeah.
To point that out, though, he did also kick off that run by killing off Wesley Dodds.
Yeah, that was the first thing he did. Yeah.
But which, as much as I love Wesley, I'm okay with that, you know, because it was a really good death.
Yeah.
He died putting one over on one of the most powerful wizards in the DC universe, which is great. And again, it sort of adds to the Justice Society that a lot of them have died, you know.
Yes.
So I quite like that. And obviously at that point, Diane was dead as well. Diane Belmont was dead. So, and they worked really well as a pair. So.
And he doesn't
but he's coming
work.
Back.
Oh, he's coming back now?
Back.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not reading
now.
I'm not reading Night Terrors.
Yeah.
Because I'm waiting for the trade, as I am with Jeff Johns' current Justice Society run. But Wesley's a part of Night Terrors, whatever's going on there. So I'm intrigued to read that. I can't wait to read it.
Too, I'm intrigued, because I was about to say before you said that he was coming back was Wesley Dodds looks 100% like he belongs in the 40s. He doesn't. Yeah. He doesn't look like. I would not stick fedora, gas mask, trench coat, and cape into a modern day superhero team. Yeah. So I'm intrigued to see what they're doing with him. You know, I'm quite looking forward to getting the trade of Night Terrors. It looks really good. Yeah.
Oh, I might be rubbish. I do not know.
Wesley Dodds, again, like I said, is another example of like, you're right. Back then, he was a generic superhero in the 1940s. Writers, if you just take a look and you let your imagination run wild, you will come up with something. Because, you know, you got Sandman Mystery Theater out of it. Neil Gaiman's original Sandman proposal was for Wesley Dodds.
Yeah.
So it's very cool. He's very cool.
Yeah.
I love him too.
Yeah.
I was
So
thinking of
what
naming him, but you know,
Oh, thanks for leaving it.
I
for
knew
me.
you were gonna name him. The
Yeah.
other guy I was gonna name was Johnny. No, kidding.
Ma Uncle.
Did you know Ma Hunkel is the first female superhero?
Yeah.
Really?
Mhm. Yep.
It's not Wonder Woman. It's Ma Hunkel.
Yep.
So, a bit of background for viewers. Ma Hunkel was literally a joke character. She was like an old lady who put a saucepan on her head and became the Red Tornado, the original Red Tornado. And I didn't know she predated Wonder Woman. That's crazy.
By a year. Yeah, by a year.
Mhm. Yep.
And she wasn't even like the main character in her strip. It was like what's it called? Scribbly.
Mhm.
That's right. She was part of Scribbly, wasn't she? Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. But she's weirdly, last I checked, she's still alive in the present day.
Yeah, she is. Mhm.
Which I don't know how necessary that is.
One of the last comics George Perez ever drew was a comic, a JSA comic where Ma Hunkel was the cleaning lady.
Oh wow, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they brought her back in a story where she's dressed as Santa Claus, didn't they, or something?
Yes.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
It's quite a good story. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, legacy JSAers. Who is your favorite new Justice Society character?
It's again a cheat for me to say Jack Knight. Because
Oh,
Jack
you can
Knight
say Jack Knight.
Jack Knight is my favorite character who's ever been in the Justice Society, but he was only in the Justice Society for like 10 issues.
Yeah.
And he didn't really do anything
Yeah.
in the time that he was in the Justice Society. So I can't say Jack Knight as that answer, sincerely. But as a legacy character, somebody who joined the JSA later, I think I'm going to say, and I also can't say Dinah Lance, the Black Canary, because she was also only in it for that one story. If I remember. Oh wait, no, she dated Dr. Midnight, didn't she?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. But I actually think Courtney Whitmore,
Yeah.
Stargirl.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like her because not only because of the Jack Knight connection, she's fun. I've always liked her from the start, from her debut. But what the thing that I really like about Courtney Whitmore Stargirl is the fact that she is carrying not one but two legacies.
Yeah.
She's carrying the Starman legacy, but she's also carrying the Stars and Stripe legacy with a belt. I think, and I think she's great, and of course she's young, so you got her as a point of view character all the time. The other thing that I like about her is, and I know this is controversial, but the fact that she dated Captain Marvel for a while, because I just always like, I was really happy for Billy.
That was a great story, wasn't it?
That was a great story that ended prematurely for me. I think it was premature.
Yeah.
So just for the viewers, there's this story in Jeff Johns' original Justice Society run where Billy, 16-year-old Billy or whatever, Billy Batson starts dating 16-year-old Courtney Whitmore, or they get an attraction at least. But no one knows that 16-year-old Billy is adult Captain Marvel. So Jay Garrick and Alan Scott see adult Captain Marvel getting a bit awkward and nervous around 16-year-old Stargirl, and they think, hello, this is a bit dodgy. and they have words with him. And Billy wants to tell him, no, it's fine, I'm really 16 years old. But the wisdom of Solomon tells him not to.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's really sad. Yeah, and it sort of shows how cool Billy is. You know, what a mature guy Billy is like. I really like that story.
I really like that story too. But when they first kiss, I was like,
yeah. So Lamar, who's your favorite Legacy Justice Society member?
Oh man, I think this one is a little easier for me to answer. Actually, it's a lot easier for me to answer. Peter Cross, the
oh,
Dr.
cool.
Midnight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Because and it's weird because he's actually a better character than the original Dr. Midnight, but I think it's just because, they didn't maximize him, as a character then.
Charles McNider.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I just think he's the new guy is really cool. He even has it's the same deal. He basically has the same costume. He has an owl that he named Charlie after the original Dr. Midnight, and he's an actual doctor. So he does operations on people and stuff like that, but he can't see unless he's wearing the Dr. Midnight glasses, which is cool. So yeah, like there's different things they could do. I just like seeing, like, when you have like superheroes like that and they do ordinary stuff, like while they're a superhero, like it's a part of their job, like him being an actual medical doctor, comes in handy when people get beat up and he has to patch them up and all of that, and stuff like that. That's just kind of cool, so yeah, I think he's definitely my favorite JSA Legacy member.
Got a cool costume too. I love his costume.
Yeah. Costume's crazy.
The original costume was really cool as well, wasn't it? Charles McNider's costume.
It's so cool that for Peter Cross, they barely did anything with it. It's essentially the same costume.
Yeah.
But he's kind of gone now, isn't he? They're just not using him, which is quite sad, as far as I know.
Yeah, like they haven't really done anything with him, So they didn't kill him off or anything. They just kind of, put him on the shelf and left him there, I guess. Yeah.
He's there. He's so useful though. Like, I mean, like he's a dog. So like in Identity Crisis, which is controversial, I think that one of the highlights of it was the fact that it was so easy to use Peter Cross because, like, oh, I need a doctor for an autopsy. Like, it's so easy to just use them, and like having writers who have any sort of medical research or medical knowledge, like it can add a layer of authenticity to the whole thing.
Yeah.
If they know what they're doing with that.
Yeah.
I really like Peter Cross. And he dated Dinah Lance for a while.
Oh, he did, yeah. And has to see her go back to Green Arrow. Which must be really hard. As much as I love Green Arrow, he's such a dick.
Well, fortunately, he didn't actually have to see her.
Yeah.
See what I did there?
Wow. Edit that out, please.
He is Dr. Midnight is a blind superhero. Both Dr. Midnights are. So Daredevil is not the first blind superhero in superhero comics. I think that part's interesting. But I also think that at the same time, what ends up happening, maybe a reason why he's not around, is because maybe people think, oh yeah, Daredevil's got that market cornered. But you know what? There's different ways to do things.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So my favorite Legacy character is Mr. Terrific.
It's a good
Michael
one.
Holt. I think he's absolutely brilliant. He's basically the cleverest man in the DC universe, and he's clever enough to let people think he's the third cleverest man in the DC universe. But we all know he's really the cleverest, He's like, Batman, Lex Luthor, let the baby have the bottle. They could be first and second, but we know what's going on. And he's just such a cool looking superhero. He's got that big T on his face, and the T spheres, that he's got going around him. They look really cool. But as cool as they made him look, he's still got fair play written on him. And he's still called Mr. Terrific, which is amazing.
It's cool, but it's cool the way that they put it on. It's not like the way. Shit, what is the original Mr. Terrific's name? Terry Sloan.
Terry Sloan.
It's not like the way Terry Sloan's fair play was, which was literally just somebody who hand wrote it on. So I do think that the way that he is designed is very cool, and he's really grown on me a lot in the last few years, because he was such a prominent part of the Jeremy Adams Flash run.
Yes,
where he hires Wally West to work for him. I think he's really cool. I agree with that.
I think it's interesting that during the New 52, when they revamped everyone and they pretty much got rid of the Justice Society for a while until they brought them back in the Earth 2 book, they just kept Mr. Terrific around and gave him his own series for a while, because he's such a cool looking character, and he's such an interesting character in his own right. And of course, he's going to be in the new Superman film, apparently, which is amazing.
Yeah,
he was also in Arrow, but I don't know, the way they did him in Arrow, he was pretty much a completely different character.
That was wild. That was wild.
I mean, he looked all right, but he just wasn't Michael Holt, I mean, his name was Michael Holt, but he wasn't the guy from the comics. This sort of because the whole thing about Mr. Terrific is that he is terrific at everything. He's conquered every other aspect of life, and so the only thing left for him to do is to be a superhero. And you could very much not believe that of the version they had in Arrow.
Oh my goodness. This is probably true of many things in the Arrowverse.
Yes, I'm afraid so. But of course, with this version of Mr. Terrific, you've got this this added thing of the tragedy of he lost his wife, and he was going to kill himself after his wife died. But not just because he'd conquered everything and there were no more worlds to conquer, but because he was on his own. And then the Spectre came to him and told him the story of the original Mr. Terrific. And it's there is stuff left for you to do. And that's when he became a superhero. I just really love that. Although I've never read that story because they never reprint it anywhere. And I'm very slowly assembling that run of the Spectre. And because it's the first appearance of Mr. Terrific and they've never reprinted it anywhere, it's really difficult to get. And it's very frustrating. So
that sucks.
Yeah, that really sucks.
The Spectre, nobody ever mentions him as a JSA character either, but the Spectre is also pretty cool. Did you see that Mr. Terrific's son has been returned?
I see. Oh, right.
Yeah,
when did that happen? No.
It happened in the last Flash.
It did, didn't it? I forgot about that. Yeah.
Granny Goodness kidnapped him and basically raised him, and then they were able to get him back.
Because I think because Jeremy Adams had a whole arc planned with that, didn't he? And it all got squashed into a couple of issues, didn't it? So
I don't know what you're talking about. Everyone should watch my Jeremy Adams interview.
Nice. But yeah, Mr. Terrific, he's terrific. Now I mentioned Arrow there, and that is just one example, one brilliant example of Justice Society characters that have been featured on TV or in movies. Now, the most recent, biggest examples of this was Black Adam and the Stargirl TV series, which sadly has now been cancelled. So first, Black Adam. Did either of you guys see Black Adam?
I did see Black Adam.
You did? Did you see it, Lamar?
Nope.
You don't seem particularly cut up about having missed it.
Not at all. Not at all.
My
What did you
favorite
think of
thing,
it, Duy?
my
Yeah.
favorite thing about Black Adam the movie is watching that movie and thinking, huh, that took 15 years to make, didn't it?
Yeah.
Dwayne Johnson really put a lot of effort into that one.
Oh, bless him.
So, in case anybody doesn't realize what I'm saying, I obviously did not enjoy the Black Adam movie. I will say this though: if it had been a JSA movie, you told the exact same story from the JSA's point of view, it might have been it would have been a better movie. Whether or not that makes it a good movie, if it clears that bar, I don't know. But it would have been a better movie if the JSA had been the main characters and Black Adam was one of the antagonists.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, it's not a good movie. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you it is, but I did quite enjoy it. I haven't bought it on DVD or Blu-ray yet, which I think speaks volumes. But I did enjoy it, and I think the thing I enjoyed most about it, like you say, was the Justice Society. I thought Doctor Fate was brilliant.
Dr. Fate was the best part.
Yeah, Pierce Brosnan's Doctor, like he looked amazing, and when the way they had him fight was amazing. The helmet looked so cool, and Pierce Brosnan was really good.
Yeah.
And I quite like Atom Smasher as well. Seeing him on the big screen was pretty cool.
Atom Smasher, Cyclone, they were fine.
Yeah.
Dr. Fate was the best part for me.
Yeah.
I was really looking forward to Hawkman because I actually, we have not spoken about him, but I actually really like Hawkman.
Yeah, Hawkman is dope. Yeah.
Hawkman is really cool because he's like, Hawkman is like Conan the Barbarian with wings and a mace. He's just gonna kick your ass. And that the Hawkman mask is one of the coolest looking masks in all of comics. The Hawkman and Hawkgirl masks are two of the coolest looking masks in all of comics.
I mean, the whole Hawkman design, I think, is wonderful. I just think it's one of the best superhero designs of all time.
He's got designed by the legendary Joe Kubert. He's got such an iconic logo that the Thundercats stole it.
Yes.
Yeah, pretty much. True. Yeah.
So he is really cool. So I was really looking forward to Hawkman, but they didn't really.
He was just a bruiser, and he was just the guy, the tough guy, wasn't he? And he's so much more than that.
He is so much more than that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a shame.
If y'all haven't read that, since we brought up Joe Kubert, if you haven't read the Joe Kubert Hawkman, you need to jump on that immediately. It's one of the best comic runs. Man, that comic is a banger from front to back.
Yes, it's really good. Yeah.
Also, the other one that I would recommend is the 1980s Tim Truman.
Yeah,
Hawkman.
It's so good. It's so good. Yeah,
amazing. It's amazing. I mean, sure, Hawkman's origin is a mess.
But who cares? He looks so cool.
Yeah, it's a big time mess, and it seems like the more they try to fix it, the worse it gets.
Yes, absolutely.
So I just think, at some point they just got to be like, we don't know what you're talking about.
While we're on that subject, Hawkman, Thanagarian or archaeologist? Which one do you guys prefer?
I like him as an archaeologist. I like him as the reincarnation of Prince Khufu, and I like how Jeff Johns tied Thanagar into it. Like, he got the nth metal, the Thanagar, the thing that makes him fly, comes from Thanagar, but he is an archaeologist who is reincarnated from an ancient Egyptian prince. I think that's a really cool concept, more than Thanagarian space cop, alien space cop.
You make it sound so bad. You know what I mean? Yeah.
What do you guys think?
I like, for the JSA, I'd rather have him be Carter Hall
Mm.
Everything you said. They can be two different characters, but I prefer Carter to Kadar Hall.
Yeah.
Which is funny because I prefer JSAer Hall to JSAer Sanders.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
I don't
do like
know.
Kendra. Kendra's cool.
Oh, Kendra's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think, Lamar?
Oh, definitely the archaeologist. The only problem I really had with that, they actually fixed it in the movie, and that was the one thing that they they really did do a good job with as far as, him. But yeah, definitely the archaeologist, because I think that just that idea that he's Khufu reincarnated, and then he ends up back home, so to speak, and he's digging around in the dirt. I think that's kind of poignant because, for years after the Arab invasion, not the Arab invasion, I'm sorry, after the Greco-Roman period, and when you get into like the 4th century, it became illegal to, number one, read Medu Neter and to go into the temples and everything. So you have this period of time where, like, for like close to like 1,000 years, these temples and things just filled with sand. So the sand had just covered everything. So that's kind of, we're still digging stuff out now. For example, they just found a whole city 2 years ago that they didn't know existed because it was covered with sand. If you go back and look at like the early pictures of the Heru Maquette, or what most people know as the Sphinx, it's covered up to the neck, right? So having to go in and dig all of that sand out and stuff, just thinking about like him as an archaeologist, that's kind of what you do,
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you go back home to the house you was raised in, and you have to cut down the bushes and and make your way to the door, and kind of walk in and hope nothing falls on you, you know what I mean? So it's just, that's just always been really cool to me. I think that's a really cool element. I mean, I like the Thanagarian stuff. Probably one of the best things that come out of that was the Rand Thanagarian War miniseries.
Oh,
It
yeah,
came
that's
out
pretty
back
cool.
in the early 2000s. Yeah, that was dope.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed that a lot. And the Hawk World story, when it first came out, I was like, man, this would be a really, really dope story if it wasn't about Hawkman, right? Because the first thing, and I know this is going to sound much worse than what I'm actually trying to say, but when I saw that, it immediately made me think about, in Flash Gordon, they had got the guys with the wings, and it was like the army.
Yes.
That's the first thing it made me think about.
Yes.
Brian Blessed.
Brian Blessed in Flash Gordon. Yes.
Yeah. And look, I'm not dissing nobody. I'm just saying I was a child, and that's what it made me think about, right? So it's not a diss, because I love that movie. So, but yeah, definitely, I think the archaeologist is better as a base. The Thanagarian stuff, I don't mind as like a world building type of thing. I just think they got too wrapped up in that and got it to the point that they didn't know what to do with it. And you could have just they could have just played pat with it, like what Duy was talking about, the connection with the nth metal and all of that, and that would have been dope. Just leaving it at that. Yeah.
I mean, I agree with that. You can have Thanagar all you want, but Hawkman is Carter Hall.
So we were talking about movies and TV though. Have either of you seen the Stargirl series?
Mm-hmm.
I have not. So, yeah.
What do you think of it, Lamar?
I haven't. I didn't finish it. And it's not because of the show itself. It's just I lost track of it with everything else I have going on. But I just think it's interesting. Like the costume design, right? They didn't really change it. It's the same one that's in the comics. Like, when have we ever seen that, like on a television show, like within the past, 20, 30 years? When has that ever happened?
Yeah.
I think that speaks a lot to the costume design that they came up with when they created that character. But
she was also on Smallville, and she had the same costume.
Same costume.
She's
See,
got a
yeah,
perfect
right.
costume, basically. She's got a perfect costume.
Yeah. It's just it's a dope costume. And you know, the episodes that I saw, I really enjoyed them, you know. And a lot of that stuff I'm out to lunch on because I just had kind of lost interest in a lot of that, like that CW stuff or whatever. But yeah, that one I thought was really, really good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I loved it. Yeah.
yeah, she was really cool in the Justice League Unlimited cartoon too.
Yes, she was, wasn't she? Yeah.
She was very cool.
Look on, sorry.
She was just very cool. She had a whole thing going on with Supergirl where they didn't particularly like each other. There was also an episode. But go ahead with what you were gonna say before, because I might.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I haven't seen series 3 of Stargirl yet because I have no idea when or if they're going to show it in the UK, which is quite frustrating. But I absolutely loved the first 2 series, and we were saying earlier on about Hourman's costume and how good it is. And again, in the TV series, it's not really that different from how it is in the comic. That the Hourman costume, which I think goes to show how great that costume is.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
and Jonathan Cake as the Shade is just perfect. He's like he's come up from the Starman comics. You know, he's absolutely brilliant. So yeah, I absolutely love that series.
You know what would be really funny? You know what would be really funny if you just did a whole Stargirl series. You know how the Supergirl cartoon basically took Superman stories and turned them into Supergirl stories? What if they just continued to do like a Stargirl story where it's just Jack Knight Starman, except it's Stargirl?
Yeah. I mean, they could have this. Yeah, I don't know what they did in the 3rd series, but those first 2 series, they were such great stories, and such great characters, you know. And that's the thing. She's got, Courtney Whitmore. She's got so much story potential in it. You know, she's a really like 3-dimensional character. There's a lot you can do with her. Yeah,
she's awesome. Yeah. I want to talk about another. Maybe this isn't specifically the JSA. There's an episode of Justice League in season 1 of Justice League where they meet the Justice.
I think battalion or something stupid like that, isn't it?
Let me look it up. This is the Justice Guild, yes, where they meet the Justice Guild because they weren't allowed to use the actual Justice Society. What did you guys think of that one?
The problem with that is that all I'm thinking is I wish they'd use the proper characters. It's a great episode, but I'm kind of pulled out of it because I'm thinking like, yeah, that's supposed to be Green Lantern, that's supposed to be Wildcat, you know?
Yeah.
So that spoiled it for me. And I don't know why DC wouldn't let them use those characters. It's boneheaded, you know?
It worked out for the best because that episode ends with them actually dying.
That's true.
Right? So when they were allowed to use the Justice Society eventually, they were still around.
So while we're talking about movies then, what do you think about Mr. Terrific in Superman Legacy? Is this a good idea to have heroes already established before Superman, if that is indeed what they're doing?
Was it just Mr. Terrific?
It's apparently going to be Metamorpho as well. And someone else too. I can't remember who. Someone weird. Yeah.
Mr. Terrific Metamorpho?
Yeah. They've got what's the guy who plays Mr. Zaz in Gotham is playing Metamorpho.
Oh man. Oh yeah, I see who you're talking about. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. I ain't gonna say nothing. I ain't gonna say a word.
Who's playing Mr. Terrific?
Let's have a look.
It's the guy, what's his name? Anthony Kerrigan from remember he was on, like Paulie said, he was on Gotham and he played Mr. Zaz.
He's playing Metamorpho, yeah.
Yeah, he's playing Metamorpho.
And there's a guy called Eddie Garthegi. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name right, but he's playing Mr. Terrific.
I have never heard of him, nor apparently have seen anything he's in. So I have, okay. Assuming that they're going to do a thing where there have always been people around, where there have always been super people around. Again, as we mentioned, it doesn't really matter. Superman can come first, Superman can come last, Superman can come in the middle. Superman would still be the best.
Yeah.
He just would be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just going to be so great to see Mr. Terrific on the big screen, I think.
Yeah.
You know, it's however they use him.
It's funny because like nobody ever says anything like, you know, obviously the entire Marvel universe takes its cue from Captain America. Nobody ever says something like, "Oh, but Namor is first," and
yeah.
You know, this Human Torch, who's not actually a human, came before Captain America. No one ever says that.
Yeah.
Come on.
It doesn't matter, does it? It's
Doesn't
fine.
matter. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I mean, because really, like with that, like, I mean, we all know how the history went down, right? And that's kind of a separate thing, you know. So you know, if you understand it that way, you could deal with the canon as it is, and it doesn't really matter, you know. That, I mean, you know, it's just kind of, you know, I mean, and we talk about that here, like when we do the stuff, you know, and it doesn't make a difference, you know. I mean, Superman is Superman. Yeah.
We care too much about dumb things.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think my final question to you now is going to be, how would you get a new comics fan to read Justice Society in one sentence? Elevator pitch.
Good Lord, Paul. What the hell? If you want a Cliff's Notes of the DC universe, read the Justice Society of America.
Nice. Yeah, right. I like it. Lamar, how about you?
The way I would do it, because, you know, with this new generation, you know, you got to be crafty. I would tell them, go watch JSA World War II. And when you get done with that, come holler at me. That's what I would tell them.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. How would I pitch it? Even though I've asked that question, I've not thought about it.
I just think the Cliff's Notes thing is because, like, the way they interact with a modern day, like, you get the whole thing. You get the whole thing. You get it from the start. You get it all the way to the end.
Yeah.
Plus, the whole concept of legacy, which is what DC does historically better than Marvel until Marvel created Miles Morales. Like, you know, historically, like, that is it. Like, there's also the Flash family, but other than that, JSA legacy.
Yeah, it's no question. You're right.
Yeah, I think that would be my elevator pitch. Is like, yeah, if you want to see why DC are separate and unique from Marvel, dare I say better? I don't know. But if you want to see why DC are separate and unique from Marvel, check out the JSA. They've got it all.
Yep. And absolutely. since you said legacy characters do it, I gotta say this. The Flash of Two Worlds is one of the greatest stories ever written in the English language.
Absolutely. Flash of Two Worlds. If you were to give someone their first DC story, it might well be the Flash of Two Worlds, right?
It could, yeah.
Very well could be. Yep.
Yeah. It's great.
If I'm gonna kick them off on like a whole, like, these are the parallel worlds multiverse story, it would probably be Flash of Two Worlds instead of that comic you keep on waving around.
Well, this.
You see, viewers, the Flash of Two Worlds is actually good.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's really good. And this is a very good cover.
Okay. You know where that comic fails? And where actually, for me, where a lot of the original JSA stories fail. When you have a multiverse story, what people want to see is this guy from this Earth meeting his counterpart from this Earth. And if you hold that comic up again, you'll see that there is a Superman from Earth 1 and no Superman from Earth 2. You'll see a Batman from Earth 1 and no Batman from Earth 2. You see one pair, which is Green Lantern and Green Lantern. Sure.
Oh, there's two atoms.
Where
Oh, yeah, there he is.
I guess
Alfred
there are
is-
two atoms.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are really the two pairs I want to see.
Also, worth mentioning, this guy played by Henry Winkler in Black Adam. Who would have guessed that?
That's true. That's
Who
true.
saw
Al
that
Pratt.
coming?
Al Pratt. Like, this is the genius of the JSA. Al Pratt. What are his powers?
He's short.
And he just has so much spunk. That's it.
I'm short and it's everyone's problem. That's his power.
It takes so much shorter for the blood to rush to my head.
Yeah. Yeah, he got that one hitter quitter when his fists glow, he get the atom things around his fist, you know.
That's true. Yeah, because they kind of added that later on, didn't they?
Yeah.
To
They added that
justify
later.
why there's just this short dude hanging around.
Clearly, for anybody watching this, clearly we are all having a great time talking about the Justice Society, and I encourage all of you to read about the Justice Society and talk about it with your friends.
Absolutely, yeah. Let us know what your favorite Justice Society stories are and characters, what your favorite characters are in the comments. But I think that brings us to the end. If any of you guys got anything to add there.
Just let us know what your favorite Justice Society story is and why is it not Doomsday Clock.
Wow.
Well, see you next time, everyone. Bye-bye.
Click like, share, subscribe, and hit the little bell icon for notifications.